So, good evening, parents, students and staff, and welcome to our annual Year 10 into Year 11 Parent Information Evening. My name is Neil Gregory, I'm the head of Year 10. Could I ask that all mobile phones are turned off? Thanks. And let us begin in prayer. Lord, MRS values here at the college are presence, simplicity, family spirit, love of hard work, and in the way of Mary. As the students in this space ponder their futures beyond this year, we contemplate these values. Lord, we pray for the St. Augustine's community, especially the young men who have gathered in this space for this evening. May we have, with your love and wisdom, with the care and guidance of our teachers, with the love and support of our parents, the insight and discernment to shape our futures intelligently. Please look after us, Lord, through the time ahead. Please help us always to live as a Catholic community, committed to the reconciliation of differences and respectful of the dignity of all. We offer this prayer through Christ our Lord. St. Marcel and Champagne, pray for us. Mary, our good mother, pray for us. May we always remember to pray for one another. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. So I'll start with some information about what our Year 10 students have been doing with regard to careers so far in pastoral care lessons. Careers have been a focus of our pastoral care lessons, and the boys have completed a careers research assignment which covered interests, abilities and values while researching the job guide through the Good Universities Guide website. Representatives from the Police and Defence Force will visit during the semester, while opportunities will be available for students to visit James Cook and Central Queensland universities. For the latest and up-to-date information on careers, visit the parent portal. Students have also had interviews with the Vocational Partnerships Group to organise work placement for week 7 this term. We've found that work placement gives a valuable insight into the world of work in their chosen pathways. This evening you'll hear from our Director of Studies, Mr. Lance Helms, discussing the process for selecting senior subjects, ATAR, QCE and pathways. There will be opportunity for you to speak with the heads of department on various subjects offered in the senior school. I will now invite our Acting College Principal, Mr. Glenn Sievers, forward for his address.
Thanks, Mr. Gregory, and welcome everybody. So tonight we're looking at moving from Year 10 into Year 11, and parents, in consultation with the kids, there are some important decisions to make when choosing subjects. In Year 11, the intensity and the academic rigour does increase. So it does become harder for the boys in Year 11, and sometimes for those boys entering Year 11, it can be a little bit of a shock. Some boys in Year 10 may have got through in a little bit of natural ability. But bearing all that in mind, what you're going to hear tonight is a couple of main messages, and that is when you're choosing your subjects, the boys need to think about what they're good at and also what they enjoy doing. So enjoying what you do in Year 11 and 12 and choosing things that you're good at is crucially important. I have 2 daughters of my own, one in Year 10, and I'll be sitting at the St. Monica's Year 10 into 11 information night next week. And my daughters, varying academic abilities, one of them is right into the very high subjects and has chosen a specialist maths, chemistry, physics pathway. The other one is a little less inclined academically. But the advice to both of them is the same. What do you enjoy doing and what are you good at? And whichever pathway they take, same with my daughters as well, that pathway is valuable and it is important. We have a lot of expert staff who you'll hear from tonight, and foremost will be Mr. Helms and our heads of department who will be scattered around the hall that you can speak to later. They are experts in their field and they know exactly what they're talking about. So please make sure you ask them questions, and if you don't understand something, ask them further questions. The last thing I'd like to say tonight is just give our boarding program a plug. We have a very good boarding program, and Mr. King has brought our Year 10 boarders in to listen to the talk tonight. And that offers a very structured environment, several hours study each night, removal from devices, and a program that will keep your sons focused. So if you were that way inclined, please consider our boarding program. But have a really good night tonight, and make sure, as I said, ask plenty of questions, and boys, choose subjects that you are good at but you also enjoy. So I'll hand over to Mr. Helms. Thank you.
I have the water because I'm going to be talking for a little longer than they did, so your patience through this is appreciated. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I will let you know that there's a lot of information that does come out in this information session, but it is all going to be online for you to go back and visit should you need to. Also, you'll get my email address. You send me any questions that you may have, especially that regard your son and his success. All right. The first thing I want you to think about, and this is to the students. You've already heard, what are you good at, what do you like? You also need to think realistically about possible career goals, because that can be very, very important in preparation for where you head once you leave Saints. Now, I know many of you may intend on being a professional soccer player. You may be an actor or a rock star, but I encourage you to have a backup plan in case that does not happen. So let's take those aspirations off the plate at the moment when we're trying to find out what subjects are going to be best for us in years 11 and 12. All right, what subjects are prerequisites? If I know I'm going to go into university and do something with physiotherapy, what subjects do I need to take? So we'll talk about that. And how do I keep my options open? All this is going to be discussed throughout this term. Eventually, you are going to be meeting with me. So I meet with every Year 10 student and his parents. For boarders, I do that through telephone or sometimes Zoom meetings, but I have those meetings with each one of the boys. And we have candid conversations about what they're willing to do and what they want to do, because sometimes those can be two very different things. And for parents, those can be two very different things. What you want your son to do, but what is he actually willing to do? So between now and when we have our set plan, it's good to have a good conversation at home talking about what is needed to achieve goals. Are these goals realistic, or are they merely dreams? So that last point, what do I do if my parents and I disagree on my career path? You must start communicating with each other. You must start being honest with each other. And boys, that starts with you being honest about yourself. I hate hearing in a set plan interview, but I'll change next year. I'll study more next year. That has to start now. So if you actually think you're going to be taking subjects that require a lot more study than you're exhibiting now, you need to start tonight when you go home and show your parents that now you're actually committed to study for those classes that are going to take a lot of work. So there's my challenge to you. So for parents, what do you need to know? We are very good at taking care of the students with the information when it comes down to getting their Queensland Certificate of Education, which means that is their certificate. They have graduated high school. Okay? Now, there's also a Queensland Certificate of Individual Achievement for students who struggle in various areas. If your son may be guided toward QCIA, then we'll have those sort of conversations beforehand. In Year 9, probably, if you've had conversations with Ms. Schofield on extreme problems that may go along with students' academic ability, you're probably the parents that will be talking to you about a QCIA. But for almost 99% of our students here, we are looking at a QCE. So it means that students are actually picking a suite of subjects, hopefully that they like and that they're good at, and they are going to pass them. So that's where that QCE comes in. Now, you'll see that I actually bypass that first point, a senior statement, because it's pretty worthless. It basically says this is what you took when you were in high school, and it gives a grade to it. So it's not a certificate, it's not something that you can show an employer, all right? But it's just a transcript from QCAA about your 11 and 12 grades. One thing that you might want to consider, in case you're not wanting to study for 6 academic subjects, is looking at vet subjects. So these are much more practical. So whether or not you think you want to be a chef, you can actually pick up good cooking skills by taking Certificate 2 in kitchen operations, for example. You may not want to be a builder, but you can pick up very good skills in Certificate 1 in construction. Not everything you take, gentlemen, needs to go toward what you're going to do the minute you graduate from school. Not everything you take needs to go toward a future university subject. All right? So what is important is for you to pick a suite of subjects that you can balance with all the other commitments that you may have outside of school, such as sport, girlfriends, work. All those things are going to have an impact on your time. So think realistically about what you are going to be able to manage. Okay, in order to get a QCE, we're going to start there, your graduation certificate. This is probably the most important thing for students to understand. They have to pass the classes that they choose. Every subject that we offer is worth points toward a QCE. For most students, they will have a possibility of getting 28 QCE points if they pass every subject from 11 and 12. Now that's more than enough. They only need 20. But what can happen is that students choose courses poorly at the beginning of year 11. And then they fail everything. And then those points that they've lost are off the table. 2 years ago, I had 2 students at the end of semester 1 in year 11. It was clear they would not get a QCE unless they did something during the holidays. They were students who were going to actually try this time. It'll be different, mom and dad. And mom and dad allowed them to choose subjects, hoping, evidently, that the kids would pass. And they didn't. So they had to change subjects. So that's not a very good idea. Because what can happen if you're not choosing the subjects that you're really in tune with at the beginning of this process, they may not be available to you later on. Certificate courses especially fill up. Once we get past the first term, we don't allow students to move into certificate courses. They're already behind. And that puts a lot of onus on the teacher to catch students up from basic skills that they've already covered with everybody else. So if the student wants to move into Certificate 1 in construction, for example, and it is May, I'll give a form to a student and say, you go see Mr. Gregory. He's the teacher in charge. So if you didn't behave very well in year 10, do you think he's going to want you in your class now? Let's see how we go with that. But it's up to Mr. Gregory. So that's all certificate courses that fall under him. All right? So with kitchen operations, that's Miss McKenzie. All right? So I just need you to be aware of that. It's very important at the beginning. If we know that we are going to have 30 students interested in Cert 1 in construction, we will create 2 classes. But if we only have 10 students interested in doing Cert 1 in construction, there will only be 1 class. And then once it hits 16, it's done. So that's why it's very important those conversations do start now. No, nothing has to be set in stone, even after the set plan interviews. There is going to be time for movement. But you'll be better off by having a more specific idea about what you're willing to do. Okay, gentlemen? What you're really willing to do and what you're going to enjoy so that you can get into the classes that you want so that they're not actually cut off later. All right, so with these QCE credits, it's not just important to pass. You have to make sure that across the board, you are going to pass, minimum standards. Okay, so that means a sound. Matthew? All right. So we also need to make sure that you understand with every credit, which means every semester that you fail, you never get that credit back anymore. In the old system, if you passed at the end, you got credit for the entire course. So I don't want parents, if you've had a student go through the old OP system, please don't get confused with that. Now it is every credit is worth a point. Once you fail, you don't get a possibility of getting that point back. Okay? Now, completion of core. This is where it's very important. Completion of core means students have started a course in year 11 and they have finished it and passed it at the end of year 12. Now, they must get 12 points through completion of core. That is doable, even if they were to fail all classes that they chose in semester 1. But the drawback is they must pass units 3 and 4 together, and they must have started it in year 11 in semester 1 for it to be counted as a subject that goes toward completion of core. So for example, in current year 11, I have one student who has changed so many subjects. He is still going to be able to have completion of core because he chose English, and then he moved to essential English after unit 1. Okay? That will still count as completion of core. He didn't pass English, so hopefully he'll pass essential English, and then he'll get 3 points toward completion of core. But it's a bad thing when we're failing classes in semester 1 because it means you have to stick with more classes. The changes are the problem. So any of the classes that this student has moved into will not count toward completion of core. So he has to have 12 there, and then he has to have 20 in all. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of things that you think, how am I going to keep track of that? That's my job. I will keep track of that. So when your son needs to change subjects or feels that he's struggling and he has your permission, I will just keep you informed with what that means. If there is concern, I will let you know. If I don't tell you there's a concern, then that means it's okay. That's just what you need to rely on, okay? But that is how the QCE, that graduation certificate, works. So they are not flexible. I tell people that C in QCA does not stand for compassion. Bad things happen in your home life. It happens. Kids can be miserable. Something, just goes horribly wrong. And QCA's advice is, well, have them repeat year 11. Okay? So just keep those things in mind. These are set in stone, and we can't do anything about it. Okay? All right, so when we're looking at the sort of subjects that are on offer, first, QCA has general subjects. This means that they're more theoretical, more academic, and are preparation for university. It doesn't mean that students who don't want to go to university shouldn't take general subjects. They could get a lot of skills going along with those. It just means that it's going to be a little more work for them. They're going to have a little more homework, and the assignments are a lot more. All right? So the applied subjects are more practical on the whole. So there's a lot more development when they're doing things, all right, rather than just sitting behind a desk. Now, I'm going to give PE and sport and recreation as a comparison. Physical education as a general subject is 75% theory and 25% practical. Okay, that's a switch from what it used to be. Sport and rec, which is the applied subject, is 75% practical and 25% theory. So you may say, why are you actually offering a subject that is 75% practical? Isn't that basically just sport and having fun? Well, in comparison to PE, it is. But remember, parents, you're going to be living with these young men for the next 2 years, and it's very important that they are happy over the next 2 years, as happy as possible. And sometimes not everything needs to be about study. Again, there needs to be balance. So sport and rec may seem like a blood subject, but it may be benefiting your son to be active and to do stuff and know that he doesn't have the pressure of horrendous assignments and massive tests. So all general subjects have a test in the external exam at the end of year 12. The applied subjects do not. So when you're putting together a package of the subjects that you're going to choose, keep that end game in mind. The more practical, the more general subjects that you do, the more you are going to have those external exams. Okay? So here's a list of what we offer. Notice for the QCE, they're all weighted the same. 4 points. So every semester is worth a point or a credit. All right? Applied subjects that we have on offer, not nearly as many, but they're all worth 4 points. So we're talking with the QCE about valued pathways. What you choose is valuable, okay? and next one. Here are the certificate courses that we're going to be offering. Now, one of the things I want you to understand when I've talked about completion of core is that the Cert 1 in construction does not go toward completion of core. Everything else does. All right, so the certificates that we're trying to offer, engineering pathways, kitchen operations, active volunteering, and fitness, will all have points going there. Now, you see in Certificate 3 in fitness that it says 4 points or 8 points. It's 8 points if you do not take sport and recreation as an applied subject. If you take sport and recreation as well as Cert 3 fitness, the Cert 3 fitness is only worth 4 points. The sport and recreation Certificate 2 is actually embedded in the Cert 3 fitness. So they call it double dipping. They're not going to allow you to do sport and rec and a sport and rec cert and get the same amount of points. So I'll help guide you through that. Are you allowed to take PE, Cert 3 in fitness, and sport and rec? Of course you are, if that's what you as a family are deciding you want to do. It's just a lot of exercise in 1 week. All right, so that's what I want you to make sure. Everything has value here, okay? And that's why we offer it. But just keep in mind with that Certificate 1 in construction, and it's because it's a Certificate 1 that it will not go toward those 12 completion of core points. All right, the next thing, the ATAR. Now, there are lots of myths about the ATAR. I know I've spoken with teachers who think that the ATAR is still just like the old OP system, and it's not. An ATAR is just a ranking number. You do not need an ATAR to go to university, but it's going to be the most common way for students to enroll in university if they have an ATAR. One thing to notice, what do you need? 2 sides there. Your ATAR is based on 5 subjects. There must be 4 general subjects minimum, and your 5th subject can be another general or a Certificate 3 or higher, or an applied subject. So we do have students who have made A's in religion and ethics and have used that as instead of one of their general subjects for their ATAR. Okay? Now, I'm going to give a little bit of a plug for religion and ethics, just so if you think about it. In Catholic education, every school, pretty much, in this diocese offers religion and ethics. I don't think there's one state school that offers religion and ethics. I could be wrong, but we have Catholic students taking religion and ethics, and when we talk about scaling, it actually scales very well as a subject. So for any parent to say, oh, well, it's religion and ethics, it won't help your ATAR, it actually can. It scales as well as general maths. So for those students who are not going into mathematical methods, that's what I want you to understand. If you do want to go toward an ATAR, it is a valuable subject to have. All right? So consider that. All right. Thanks, Matt. All right, so what is this ATAR? It is just a ranking system that QTAC has put together. QTAC is the Queensland Tertiary Admittance Center, and they actually funnel all the applications in year 12 of students wanting to go into university. So what they do is get information from QCAA, from what your marks were from your external exams, etc., and QTAC calculates your ATAR. So for some students, ATARs are very, very important. If you wanted to go into medicine or physiotherapy, engineering, and wanted to be in Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne or Canberra, the ATAR is important because you're competing against the best of the best around the country. So that number can be very, very important. If you are considering going into medicine in Brisbane, you need to really think about making sure you choose certain subjects to help you get there, because you'll probably need a 98 or higher ATAR. And that's extremely high. So how it's calculated is how well you've done in your subjects, point by point. Every general subject is, I keep doing that, sorry about that. Every general subject is worth 100 points. They get that information, how many points did you make out of 100? and then they go through their algorithms and they scale. So certain subjects scale better than others. So meaning 100, if you had 100% in general maths versus someone who had 100% in math methods, that math methods is going to scale much higher, even though they're both 100. So just know that there's a scaling process that goes on. Okay, so there's information about it based on 5 subjects. Please note that passing English is mandatory to get an ATAR. But it doesn't have to be one of the subjects used in calculating your ATAR. Okay? But you must pass it. Okay? Thanks, Matthew. All right. Here's what to think about. Sometimes ego gets in the way. I want to compete with somebody else. And healthy competition when it comes, to academics is a good thing. But we need to be realistic with it as well. So if you're going for an ATAR, especially if you're thinking about trying to get a high ATAR, this is what you need to think about. Is it a personal priority? Is it monitored at home? And parents, what I mean by that is dining room table monitoring, not letting the student go into the bedroom and you saying, did you study? Yeah. I'm talking about active monitoring. So most year 10 boys like to tell the truth, but there's also self-preservation that gets in the way. What my parents don't know won't hurt them. You've probably heard that before in some context. So if you ask them a direct question, listen to how complete their answer is. But it can be something that, as a family, you ensure that maybe the phone is left out of the bedroom when they're studying. Something is put in place so they don't find themselves falling behind at the very beginning. They're not going to want to lie to you. But they also would prefer if you actually didn't ask the question. But as your job as parents, you need to ask the questions. Okay? That active monitoring is very, very important. All right, so for an ATAR, is theoretical study enjoyable? Because you're going to get a lot of that at university. So if you actually get bored sitting at a desk, listening to a lecturer, taking notes, well, that's what a lot of those general subjects are. And that's what a lot of university is as well. So keep that in mind, all right? And the last thing is that balance I was talking about. The commitments outside of school do change. We've had a past school captain come through who was going to go into medicine, and then he got a girlfriend at the end of year 10. He's changed to be a teacher because that was something that he thought he could balance his life and his study skills a little more because he couldn't get the girlfriend out of his head. Good choice. He ended up with a very good exit mark. But he thought about what he needed to balance and what was important. Now, with that story, I have no idea if the two were still together, but anyway, it is just what happened. All right, thanks, Matthew. All right, so this you've already seen. I asked you to pick 4 subjects from our preliminary list. These were subjects that we are able to offer. Okay? From the students who have turned stuff in, you're going to get this form later at the end of this presentation, and that is what the existing lines are going to look like. So I've taken that information, tried to create lines that we aren't going to have any too much conflict on, but there's always going to be a problem. And if you actually look at the right side of the screen, you're going to see that column wish list. So I'm going to explain how this next process is going to go. The subject selection sheet that you are going to get today to take home is one that is going to be useless within a week because it will help me finalize the lines. So in week 3, students are going to get a different sheet. And that's why there's an urgent timeline with this one. What you're getting today has to be submitted by Friday, because then that's when the lines are going to be looked at to be set. There will be no wish list after that. Okay, so I'll take you through that. Okay, so 95% of the students actually submitted that previous form, which was good. So the version 2 that you're going to get tonight has the lines put together based on the best fit. Okay? Now the form is going to be on the portal that you get. Just know though, later on we will be taking it down because it's going to be useless by the end of the week. Okay? So, students, you're going to choose one subject from each line. Lines 5 and 6 are mathematics and English. Every student must do mathematics and English. We have left religion and ethics off. Okay, so that's not coming into play at the moment. So from those 6 lines across the board, just across, you can see where the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is. One choice on each line. Okay, so you'll get both of those. That did mention on the previous slide that if you don't take study of religion, you will have to do religion and ethics. Okay, so there's the trade-off. If any students do want to take study of religion, and Ms. Fulton will be talking to you about that, the value of that subject. If you do take study of religion, you will have 2 periods of study time instead of doing religion and ethics as well, unless you want to do religion and ethics. I haven't had a student take me up on that one yet. All right, sorry, next. All right, so here's where we are at the moment. What happens if I don't like anything on one line? What happens if I like 2 things on one line and I needed to split? That's what that wish column is for. So the form you're going to turn into me by the end of the week, it might happen that you wanted to do film and TV and music. Well, they are on the same line. So your job would be to circle or highlight one of them and then put on a different line, one that you don't choose. You write in music, for example. I wish music were not on line 1, line 3. Okay? So just know that's the process that we're going through. It doesn't matter which one that you write on the line. I'll know what the conflict is. Okay? So it doesn't matter. You don't need to know which one would move. I just am recognizing your conflict. Okay. So I've used this example from the exact sheet that you're going to get. So if you do look at this PowerPoint or this presentation when you're at home, you'll see it. Okay, student A would like to do design and specialist maths, both on line 3 only. So the student must choose one for line 4 and write the other subject on a different line in the wish column. Okay, now I wasn't able to write that on there, but that's just letting you know that's what the wish column is for. So in those first 4 lines, you will either circle or highlight one subject on each line, or you will circle, highlight 2, which has happened in the past, 2 that you want, and then on the other 2 lines, you choose the subjects that you hope get moved. All right? I have had one student in the past who had 3 classes on one line, and he had to choose one. So that's why this is a student-driven timetable. It depends on how many students are wanting to select subjects. Okay? So that subject can run independently. It might run as a composite, right? But we want it to run. But it all depends on student interest. Okay. So final line structures that you will get, gentlemen, in week 3. It's developed to best fit the majority of students. Okay? No wish list will be there anymore. So that's where we're headed. Once the final line structure has been developed, a copy will be sent home, and then you will bring it back with your set plan interview when we schedule those, and I'll get into set plans in just a bit. All right, so what do we need to do as families? We need to actually find out about what these subjects are about. Talk to the HODs, talk to teachers, look at those report cards that just came home. Sometimes a D in a subject means not interested in the subject. Sometimes it means not interested in the teacher. Sometimes it means not very good at the subject. But take a look at those things, okay? So I guess the best thing that you can do is discuss as a family why you're wanting to choose the subjects you are choosing. So gentlemen, you tell your parents what you're looking at and why. And then parents, you need to guide your son in a direction that is going to benefit him. You may want your son to go to university. He may not want to go to university. If he wants to keep his options open, then there's conversation. But still, you're going to have him at home for 2 years. All right? And the last thing you're going to want to do is create a rod for your back in forcing him down a direction, because what we've noticed is that when many of these boys hit year 12, they push back significantly. So just keep that in mind in your conversations. All right, so are some subjects better for your ATAR than others? Here's our message. The ones that would be better for your ATAR are the ones that you are good at. There's no point taking a subject that scales well if you're not any good at it. So when we're talking about how these subjects are weighted, all right, it is not always that important. If you're an A student, don't think it matters that much that you have to take the certain 6 subjects that normally scale the highest, unless you're going to enjoy those 6 subjects. So show you the top 8, okay? So note that the top 6 did not change. That was the same order from the year before. Specialist maths, physics, chemistry, mathematical methods. Those 4 have traditionally been the most difficult subjects. They require a lot of work. Those students who are in pre-mathematic methods in year 10, you will be encouraged to continue with it as long as you're able to cope with it. Those students who are in pre-general mathematics, you're not taking mathematical methods unless you see me after this, all right? You're just going to be way too far behind. So why do that to yourself, okay? But these scale well. We had a student last year make 100% in mathematical methods, and he made 99% in specialist maths. Okay? That's doing well in that subject. He's picking subjects that were good for him. So that's more important than saying, I want to take a subject. It's more about taking the subject that's good for you. The Ducks of the Year, the first year we went through with this new system, took music. And music doesn't necessarily scale very well. But he made 100%. He got a fantastic scholarship. He enjoyed having music. Even though it doesn't scale well, 100, he got Ducks of the School. He was picking things that he liked and what he was good at. All right, so we're going to be talking about this from week 5. The boys are going to come back from camp at the end of week 4. Hopefully, all of them will come back without injury and not sick. That would be good. And we're going to start set plan interviews starting on that Tuesday. We are taking a break through week 7 when they are having work experience. And if some of the days that we have in weeks 5, 6, and 8 are not convenient to you, I just need you to email me, and then we'll come up with some other time that we can meet. All right? But we're going to start that process by having the conversation. So what that entails is my having advanced copy of the set plan form. So I did bring one with me. All you boys have received one of these. This has to be returned on Friday. This Friday, you will return the set plan form and the preliminary wish list subject form on Friday. I will keep your form. Then when we have set plan interviews, I'll refer to it. So, for example, there is a question that says, on average, how long did you spend on homework or study each night? 30 minutes, 1 to 2 hours, more than 2 hours. If you are going for a high ATAR, you're probably needing to spend at least 3 hours a night in year 11. It's a lot of work, so you need to have that commitment. The more general subjects you have, the more time that you have. Right? So these are the things that we'll talk about. If you think you're going to take math methods, specialist maths, physics, chemistry, economics, and literature, and you study 30 minutes a night, maybe that's not such a good choice, okay? So I never mean to be offensive when we have these set plan interviews, but I am very candid in my approach, okay? So just be aware of that. So the students who I have taught, you know what my personality is like. I never intend, ever, to make someone feel uncomfortable, but I might be asking you some very uncomfortable questions if I feel like you're not making good choices. So just make sure that you're not, first of all, gentlemen, lying to yourself about what you're putting on that set plan form, okay? There should be a correlation between your set plan and your report card, okay? And where you're wanting to head with your subject selections. So does that sort of make sense? So anything that is a flag is something that I'm just going to question. Generally, the set plan interviews only need about 15 minutes. Families that have worked together, they see the lines, they're finding how they can actually have a successful dialogue with their sons, and they come up with a solution going forward, 15 minutes is more than enough. And 80% of the set plans go that way. There are a few that I have to have multiple interviews with, because sometimes I have a boy who is very stubborn. The mother doesn't want to agree to it, the father doesn't want to agree to it, and I won't agree to it, so we send the family away and then we come back, okay? But gentlemen, you are going to have input in the selection of your subjects, but it is your parents' call. Just be aware of that. They have to sign off on what you take. And if you can convince them that you're going to be good at something and your parents are going to sign off on it, I will state my concerns, I will document my concerns, and I'll sign off on it. Okay? I'm not going to contradict your parents. But that's what the conversation is about. Because we don't want you hitting a point at the beginning of year 12 and you've lost everything. And there's no point in you continuing. You're not going to get a certificate. You're not going to get the QCE. So let's just make sure that we start from the beginning in making good choices. All right, now a few websites. I'm going to go through these very quickly. We will help students access a QCA account called MyQCE. So just know that there's going to be information there. My Future as well gives information that might help some students, especially if they're very undirected, and we'll go through that. QTAC actually has information about what prerequisites are for different courses. So if students are thinking, oh, I might want to go into law, I might want to go into economics, whatever it may be, they can actually get on the QTAC website and do some searching and find out what those prerequisites are. Now, one thing I do want to say to you is subjects like economics or specialist maths, you need to be aware that not every school can offer them. So very few times will they put in the QTAC guide that those are a must. If the school doesn't offer it, the school doesn't offer it, okay? So just be aware of that. We're very fortunate that we do have those subjects running, but students aren't going to be disadvantaged if they think they want to go into economics in university, but it's on the same line as something else, and that's more important. Then get into the university degree in economics without having taken it at high school, okay? Okay, last one, FYA, and here we go. So, subjects you must take for all of year 11 and 12 to be eligible for certain things. That's what I'm talking about, the prerequisites. So that's from the QTAC. Now, I went through with one of the parents today with one of the previous QTAC guides. Since the international students have not been coming back in, the standards are a little different than what they did. You need to remember that universities are businesses, and your son has a dollar value. And they'll be happy for you to invest in their university, even if your son's not prepared. So keep that in mind. The prerequisites are being kind of phased out at the moment. There are certain degrees at universities that have definite prerequisites, okay? But there are others that say they just want you to have a QCE, and that's to go to university. So it doesn't mean that it's going to be harder or an easier thing. It's just they're needing people to be in those courses, and they're wanting students to look at it and say, I can get into that, okay? So just be aware, okay? Now, those things, when we're looking at prerequisite, assumed, and recommended, a lot of things are going to assumed now, okay? So just be aware of that, okay? Next, and a final note. This is the end. So Matthew, don't go to the next PowerPoint, next slide, thank you. All right, so I know I may have gone quite quickly. I thank you very much for actually being very, very attentive, but I want you to really focus on this last part. Gentlemen, you need to pick what you like, and you need to pick what you are good at. And if your parents are forcing you down a direction for something that you don't like, have a civil conversation. Do a TED Talk with your parents and persuade them why your choices are the best thing for you. And if they're the best thing for you, then aren't they going to be the best thing for your parents over the next 2 years? Put your skills in place. But I can't emphasize that more. What you like and what you're good at. All right, now our heads of department are going to be around here at these tables, and they might be able to answer some of your questions. They may have some things for you to look at and take with you. On this end are the sign-in sheets for the set plans. If you actually know a good date from week 5, 6, and 8, and a good time when you want to come and see me for a set plan with your son, you can start that process now, okay? Otherwise, we'll get in contact with you. You suss out your calendars, you call. All the information is there for you to actually set up a set plan interview. So that's not necessarily has to be done today. But the other thing I do want you to take, though, before you get out of here, is this form. Because that's the form that I need back with the set plan on Friday for those lines to be finalized. And students, if you don't bring it back, it just means you don't have input into how those final lines are structured. So it's in your best interest to bring this in by Friday. If you have forgotten it at home, if you have lost it, go into the office, into the front office, ask for another copy. It will be no good for you to turn in 2 or 3 copies for yourself. Your name only gets counted once. But go in, be proactive. Don't act like you didn't know. Do something about it, okay? So, set plans are there. Heads of department will be here. And on this mic, I'm going to get Matt to turn off the mic when I say thank you. And then this is where you can come up and grab one of the sheets for the lines. So if you would, only 1 sheet per family, per student. Okay, so the fallants can have 2. All right, but everybody else, just 1, please. Appreciate that? All right, thank you very much for your attention tonight. I'll be around. We'll be around to answer your questions. Thank you.